Hi there. Let's learn about some simple commands on Linux that are part of the GNU CoreUtils package. So if you've been working on Linux command line, there are a lot of commands that are available at your disposal, and a couple of basic commands on Linux are part of the package called the GNU CoreUtils package. Do you know what all commands are part of the GNU CoreUtils? If depending on what distribution you use, you might want to use their package managers to print the listing of all those commands. So here I'm using an Ubuntu distribution in this particular session, so I could actually run a command called dpkg dpkg -l CoreUtils. It'll give you a huge list of files that are part of this package. You can actually say pipe it to maybe grep and search for, maybe you can use that, rather I would use fgrep this time. The difference between grep and fgrep is that fgrep does not use regular expressions, so backslash is treated as backslash, forward slash is treated as just forward slash, not some regular expression delimiter. I'm going to use them, and it's also faster in searching, right? All of these are commands that are part of the GNU CoreUtils package. In this particular video, I'll not be covering all the commands. I'm going to make multiple videos to cover interesting commands categorized in different forms, different topics. For now, I'll talk about very simple commands in here. The commands like cat command, things that you should know about cat command, about echo, and also some commands like printf and read. A couple of them are built-ins also. So yeah. So first of all, if you've been using cat command, I'm sure you know what cat command is used for: concatenating files, showing contents of the file. But do you know that cat has lots of interesting switches for convenience? One such switch I can think of is cat -n. What does cat -n do? It basically tries to add a line number to every single line that's being processed. Like you see here, every line that I'm typing from the screen is printed with a line number. How would you use this? Two ways. One, you could actually use it in a form of a pipeline. Let us say I run a command called ls-l and say /etc. I want to number the output of ls-l. I can do that by just using ls-l pipe /etc pipe cat -n. Any command that prints output on standard output, you want to have a prefix line numbers for them, you can just pipe it to cat -n. You could also use it to number add line numbers to your source code if you're writing some programs. So let's say I'm not sure if I have some programs in here. Let me just go to randomly check. Okay, I have the Linux kernel in here, and I'm just going to take one of these functions, right? The kernel, let's say init/main.c. Normally when you do a cat on this, it's going to print the entire kernel source code, but I can actually use cat -n instead and number every single line. A very interesting observation is that it also numbers blank lines. You can see this? All the blank lines are also being numbered. But there are times where you want to just count the number of source lines and exclude all the blank lines. If you want to accomplish something like that, you can use another command instead, and that's called nl. nl, as the name suggests, stands for number lines. So you can say nl. You can see the output, the number of lines reported by nl is much lesser. You can see after 1401, the blank line is not counted. Then you can see 1402 being printed in here, right? So the number of lines reported by nl is much lesser compared to cat -n in this case. So if you really want to find out the slok count of a file, number of source lines of code, that is for any source file, prefer to use nl command. But you just want to print the output of any file prefix to line numbers, even including blank lines, I think you can use cat -n. It's an interesting feature. There's another feature I should talk about cat command, and for this I need to demonstrate one file of interesting importance in here. So I have created a file in here, a very simple file called a.txt. Let me just show you the file content and the file size. So if I just try to do a cat a.txt, it's just going to print the contents of the file. This is a normal way that you want to see a text file, right? Text files are printed by using cat and a file name, and it shows here's a simple text file. The entire contents of the file is this much. It shows here's a text file. To validate this, if I just say ls-l a.txt, look at the size of this file. The size, ls-l prints all these information the stat information, right? So you have the permissions and the number of links and the ownerships. I've logged in as a user account called Moonranger on my machine. So yeah, you can ignore this. And the size of the file reports as 74 bytes. Now here's a question. Is it really 74 bytes? Let's find out. If you look at the string, I'm just going to copy the string in here. I'm using the convenience of mouse, where I'm just selected it. I'm going to paste it in this place. I want to find out how many characters are there in a string. There are many ways to do it. One of the easy ways to do it would be echo minus n, and then you could actually get that, copy this particular, copy the string. Oh, I think it copied everything. Sorry, it selected everything. Just a minute. I'll just copy this part and then say echo minus n and paste the string along, and then say pipe wc minus c. I just clear the screen. It shows number of characters in the string. Oh, here's a small problem. I think I'm using shell prompt, and the shell prompt, when you have opening quotes, I think is looking for the matching closing quotes in this case in my Z shell. So Z shell smartness, I'm just going to do one thing. I'll just try to add this all in double quotes. Alright, so if you look at it, the number of characters in the string is only 25 characters. But then if you do ls minus l and a.txt, which actually had that content, it reported as 74 characters. What you learn from here is this: never trust the output of cat command as is, because there are a lot of non-printable characters which are not printed on the screen. For example, cat does not print ASCII nulls. It does not print tab character. If they exist, it'll just add a tab stop instead. And more interestingly, this particular file has a lot of backspaces. So if you want to know the real truth about this file, you want to print the file in raw format, printing all non-printable characters. The right way to do it is cat minus capital A. You can see this file is actually hiding a secret message. And these are nothing but backslashes being added using ANSI skip sequences. So it added so many backspaces. So backspaces being added using ANSI skip sequences. So many backspaces were added, basically positioning the cursor right in the beginning to write back this. So basically, when I said cat a.txt, it did print this message. Then it repositioned the cursor all the way to the beginning, because I put so many backspaces followed by the string again. So if you probably want to see string data in raw format, one, you can use cat minus capital A. Another way you can do that is by using commands like od minus c, a.txt. od stands for octal dump. This is an aging Unix command. When you think you should be using od, I would recommend you to use hexdump instead. For all the modern Linux environments, we'll have hexdump, part of the GNU code details again. You can also use hexdump and say a.txt. You can also use hexdump minus capital C a.txt, which will give you a more convenient way. It prints the hexadecimal values of the ASCII notations of all the characters in this file, plus it also prints the printable data. All printable characters are printed on this side, right? And yes, these can be used as pipelines. You could actually run, I'm not sure if it makes sense, but I can actually say ls minus l pipe hexdump minus capital C like this. It still works, right? So if I say ls minus l, you can read it this way. Now, there's one of the features I tell you about cat command. Cat does have many other switches, but minus n and minus capital A is something that you should be aware of. You're not. You can always use cat minus help to look up other switches, but just make sure that these two switches, you will need them more often, so remember them. Alright. The next feature I talk about is echo command itself. I guess you know the echo has a way to echo something on the screen, but by default echo always adds a new line. So if you don't want echo to add a new line, you can say echo minus n and say hello world. At my shell prompt, it may not make much difference because I'm using Z shell. It just adds a percentage symbol at the end. The right way to test it would be perhaps put it in a shell script. So I just say a.sh. Let me use nanoid for this time. I'll say echo hello world. The echo, this is another string. So I added just two echo commands in here. Let me just save this up. And to run this, I can just say, sh a.sh, or I could actually use chmod plus x a.sh, add execute permissions to this particular script, and say /a.sh. You can see that these two messages are printed on two separate lines. So if all you want to print them on the same line, you could actually use this technique where you could use echo -n in here. By default, the -n switch. Sorry, sometimes I use VI editor. I'm a VI junkie, so bear with me when I just type Vim. So I could use any editor. You could use Vim, you could use Nano, any editor of your choice. Okay, so I say echo -n, and when you say hello world, followed by this is a string. When you exit, when you now run this particular program, this particular shell script, you can see that echo does not add a trailing new line. If you want to use echo command without adding a trailing new line, you can use echo -n. If you want echo to, interpolate /escape sequences passed as a string, you could say echo -e. You say echo -e. If without echo -e, just see what happens. If I say echo and just say hello /n world /n, this is a test. Okay, looks like the Z shell takes care of escaping all these escape sequences. But let me try this in Bash. If you try the same command in Bash, you can see just printed in raw format. If you want the Bash shell to escape all these /escape sequences, you want to interpolate it, use a -e switch. Right? I think I put a /i there. /i does not make any difference. So, okay. Right. So /n is new line, /r is character return, /t is tab character. So all this interpolation works as expected when you use -e switch. If you don't know about it, there's also another command called printf. If you want to really use the C printf function equivalent in a shell, you could use the printf command. And I find printf command useful for one main use case, and I'm going to show you what that is. So printf lets you use print with formatting. So I could actually say printf, and I could use something like, say, player %20s, and then say score %3.2f /n, followed by, I can use a player, let's say Sam, and let me put a score as 3.5. It takes care of all the formatting like the C style printf function. The C printf function does all this formatting. You can see that, if I just say %20s that you see here, it actually makes sure that the string is padded with 20 characters. By default, it's right justified. If you want, you can make it left justified by, I guess, using a minus switch. Yeah. You can see that after Sam, there's a lot of spaces added to 20 characters followed by a comma. Then you can see the score. I put 3.2f, so that basically makes sure that the floating point is up to 2 decimal points. Totally 3 characters, 2 decimal points. You can actually make it even bigger. We can actually say 5.2f. In this case, you can see some extra padding is done for accommodating up to 5 digits. So these kind of features are supported in printf. Why I prefer using printf other than the formatting feature is one common use case as a programmer. If you're a programmer, more often you might want to find out, convert a decimal number to hexadecimal number. I tell you, there are certain commands which actually print memory addresses in decimal notation. There are certain commands that do that in Linux. Sometimes the addresses are printed in decimal notation. You want to convert to hexadecimal. You want to convert from decimal to hexadecimal. It's pretty straightforward. You can actually say printf. I can say 0x %x /n, and I can just put some decimal number. Let's say, let me try 127. You can see that it becomes 0x7f. So if you want to convert from decimal to hexadecimal notation, printf can be used for this purpose, right? So it understands all the format specifiers just like the C printf function. It's a wrapper on top of that. Another use case for printf I really liked is it's an abuse of printf, I would say. It's another use case. So that could be like formatting fields. For example, let's assume I have a file. this file has got a couple of words, let's say. Just going to put some names for simplicity. I'm going to use John, Smith, Adrian, James, Rossum. I'm just trying to make up names in here. Okay, Thomas, Dennis. Okay. So I have a bunch of names in here. Now by default, if at all I want to convert to, like, say, I want to group them as two words, like two word names, I can do that. So let me just try to show you how that can be done using printf quite easily. So we normally do a cat b.txt. That's what you get. When I say printf, and I'm just going to use %s space %s, right, /n, and now I'm going to say $of, you could say less than b.txt. By the way, this is a special shell syntax to substitute the contents of the file in place. So if at all you want to substitute command line arguments and you want to substitute the command line arguments based on file contents, one of the ways to do that is by using cat command here. You could actually say $of cat b.txt or using backticks operator with cat b.txt, but you can actually make it more convenient by simply using less than sign like this. And so if you have a long string of words and want to group them as two words separated by new lines, you know how to do that. If you want to make it like say three words, you could still use 3% like this and it works, right? So this kind of grouping of strings sometimes very conveniently done using printf command, right? So these are different commands that I want to talk about. The last one I will talk about is about the read command. Read is most useful for getting user input from the shell prompt, and read has lots of command line switches that many of you might not be aware of. But therefore, for example, if you want to read some user input into a shell variable, you could say read, and you can just say maybe data, and whatever the user types up to a line is read into a variable called data. You can say echo $data and it prints it back. Sometimes you may want to print a prompt for user input. So for that I can say read -p, and I can just say enter your name and then say username. So you get a prompt, and I can type anything. I can type, let's say, John Doe, and that'll be stored in this shell variable called username. So you can actually say echo $username to actually access this username. There's also another use case for this. Sometimes you might want to prompt for passwords, and you know what, passwords must not be echoed. So we just say read -p, enter password, and I'm going to store this in a variable, let's assume. But you know what, the password is typed, it's echoed, and you don't want that. We don't want this password to be echoed back. We don't want people standing behind your shoulder to see what your password is. So if you're going to be writing a shell script and you want to take passwords without echoing, the early generation people use stty command to turn off echoing and turning back echoing. It's a little too clumsy to use in my opinion. I would recommend using read -n -t. Oh, -t is for timeout. I'm sorry, but that's -t is for timeout. I think it's -s. Yeah. So you say read -s -p and say enter password. Now if you just type in the password, I'm going to type it here. I'm going to say secret. It does not print it. It does not print that password. Password is not echoed back. But if you just type echo $password, whatever I typed is actually stored in this variable. So for prompting a password, you can use read -s. If not, you want to read user input and add a timeout to it, you could also say, read -p, enter yes or no, right? And I could also use a timeout. I could say timeout of 2 seconds. Because here after 2 seconds it just times out, right? So you could add a timeout, and this variable would be unset if the user has not added any values. The last thing I should talk about is read -n. If you don't want to read a line, you want to read just few characters, you could also use read -n, and you can just say maybe you read -n, just read one character and then say -p, enter yes or no. It does not expect you to type in a word and press enter. If I can just type a character, I can just press Y or I can press N. I can press anything I want. I can put any character I want, and that will be stored in a variable that you pass as an argument. If you just say option, it will be stored in this variable. So we just type Y, let's say echo dollar option, which one is Y. There's a lot of convenient features that Read provides. But you know what? Read is not part of GNU Core Utils. Read is a shell built in. So it works a little differently on different shells. If you're using the bash shell, suggestion, just type help read to get information about Read. All the shell built-ins you can find out by using the help command in bash prompt. You can say help read and it gives you complete details. You can say help read pipe less if you want to use a pager. It tells you about all the options. I just covered a few options which I found very, very useful. Not echoing anything on the screen, like for example taking in passwords, or just accepting few characters without having to wait for the enter key, or printing a prompt string. So all these I covered, but there are much more that you can see in here. If you're using Z shell like me as your regular driver, so you could as your daily driver, you could actually use the help command may not work on Z shell. Instead, you might want to try man Z shell built-ins, ZSH built-ins. The shell built-ins are covered in here. You might want to search for the read command all the way down. The search can be a little tricky, but yes, you'll find it somewhere down here. So look for push D. Yeah, read is covered in this place. For most part, Z shell provides exact similar replica features as bash shell. So most of the options I talked about in bash also works in Z shell. There are some changes here and there. You can have a look at this help document to get those details. So all of these are interesting commands I thought I'd share with you. So if you find this video useful, please do comment if you want more videos like this. And yes, I'll be covering much more videos in relation to GNU Core Utils, some interesting features related to them, interesting commands, and also talk about some Linux specific tools and utilities in the future videos. Thank you very much. So hope to meet you in future video. Thank you.